Welcome to the front of my bookshelf. I'm going to do a bookshelf tour today. I was asked to do a bookshelf reorganization video, and I did reorganize my books, but after I took all of my books off of my shelf and kind of stacked them up on my coffee table and couch in the order in which I wanted to place them on these shelves, I was like, okay, now I'm really overwhelmed by all these stacks of books, so I just put them up on the shelves and I was like, we're gonna do a bookshelf tour instead. So I'm gonna show you every single book that I personally have in my library, and I will tell you which of these books I've read, which ones I haven't read, and then at the end, we're gonna make like a TBR jar together so that I can finally work on knocking out some of these books. So let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to the Let's Embarrass Myself part of the video, where I show you every single book that is on my shelf right now, except for two, because I did buy 2 new books from Book of the Month within the last couple of days. This is the romance section of my collection. We so far have not hit a book that I've read, and that's fine. A lot of them I got through Book of the Month. One of them I purchased at a library sale. That was A Million Junes. Everything else Book of the Month. Here is still more that I have not read. I have read all of the To All the Boys trilogy, watched all the movies, love it. So cute. That's why it's still on my shelf. I read this, loved it, and this one so much so that I purchased the hard copy version. Water for Elephants is one of my very favorite books of all times. I've only read this book once, but it was a quarter. You can't beat it. This is probably one of my favorite reads of the year. And then we have my Christina Lauren's. This was the very first Christina Lauren I ever read, but I haven't read Purple Hearts. I don't know how that got into this section. Same with Stupid and Contagious. Haven't read that either. The Hating Game is one of my very favorite romance novels ever. And this is single-handedly the saddest book I've read, and I've read it more than one time. The Ring is the only Danielle Steele book I like, and my mom bought this for me. It's great. Inspection is the start of the horror-ish section. I've read Inspection, but the rest I'm pretty sure I haven't read. And after we get through the horror section, I'm pretty sure that we're going to move on to general fiction. Some of these books I had a hard time classifying. Oh, sorry, Shirley Jackson is up next. I have 4 of her books, and I haven't read any of them. These are so old, but they were 50 cents each, and I just couldn't pass them up. And here we've hit the general fiction. This part was hard because the glare was just terrible on that protective film. Like I said, this is the general contemporary fictions that I don't know how to truly classify them. So I just lumped them all together. And you'll see that I have more of this author's work later on. That's the only paperback version of a book from that author that I own. I've heard great things about this book, but still haven't reached for it. I don't know about these ones. I saw that one and I wanted to get it because I remember the movie. I never watched the movie, but whatever. They were all like 25 cents at the library. How can you pass that up? That was an ARC that I have not read, but it was an ARC that I purchased from the library. It was an ugly couch anyway. It was from the Book Fairies of New York. I found it in Grand Central Station when I was on my New York trip this year with my husband. And now we're back into more Book of the Month books. Again, more Book of the Month books that I have not read. The Mountains Echoed and A Thousand Splendid Suns. I haven't read The Mountains Echoed, but I have read A Thousand Splendid Suns, and it was terribly sad. The Host I've read, of course, and then we hit my Harlan Coben section, all of which were purchased at the library. Some of them don't have the stickers on them anymore. But I have a lot of Harlan Coben, and I haven't read any of the books of his that I personally own, but my children's grandma has lent me a couple of different of her books, and I've read them, and I love them. So he is going to just be, if I see him in the wild, he's going with me. We've hit the poetry section. I've read certain poems from these books, but not all of them. A lot of them are to deal with grief, which I purchased after the passing of my grandfather. This was a gift, as was this from my friend Brittany. And then we hit the classics. This is the oldest book in my library, and all of the books that I'm showing you right now I've read more than one time. I have an English degree, and English was my favorite class in high school, so I've read all these books more than once, especially Flowers for Algernon and To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a book that my friend bought me. It's not a classic. Here we have a bunch of different books that I purchased from Half Price Books because I love the covers, and I know that I'll get to them eventually because I do love classics, but I haven't read any of them to date. They're stunningly beautiful, and they are all classics, like I said. I still can't believe I haven't read Frankenstein. This is the drop caps from Penguin. I have G, B, and A. I've read all three of them. I think the covers are stunning, and I just love them. I want more. This book's sad. Don't read it. It's a nonfic. This one takes place near my house in Pennsylvania. My parents' house, I mean. And then I have a bunch of Amish murder books. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a week where I just read nonfiction, which I don't have a lot of, but here I'm showing them all to you. And again, I've only read one of them, His Bright Lights. Here we've reached the YA section. YA that I have not read. It's embarrassing, for sure, but you have to understand that I wanted to be a young adult librarian or a teen librarian when I went to library school, so I have a ton of YA books. This is a book signed by Maggie. Yeah, I have a ton of YA books. I still do read them, even though I sometimes find them to be a little young for me because, I turned 33 this year. But something about reading YA as an adult feels very healing for teenage me. I think I've read Kill You Last. And I love R.L. Stine because I was a Goosebumps girl growing up. But something about reading young adult as an adult feels very healing for me. That's why I still have so many of them on my shelf. Besides the fact that I have 2 children who will at one point in their life be young adults, so I want to have books for them as they get older. Some of them, sure, might be a little bit more for, women like this one. And this one, I think they might not enjoy those. But the fantasy books that I have, I for sure think that my children will enjoy them. A lot of these, I don't remember what they're about, but I did buy them a pretty long time ago, at least 5 years ago. Except for this one. That one's pretty recent. A lot of them are from when I was back in my BookTube era, way back in the day when I was watching literally only BookTube. This one I bought at the thrift store. And then here I've read Simon. This is one of my very favorite books I've ever read. It got me into reading as a teenager. This book was very cute, and I love Adam Silvera. You cannot tell me anything negative about his work because I think he's great. Here we have a Tahara book that's signed from her. I love that book. It made me cry. This one made me cry too, and I haven't read this or this or this. I might have read Sadie. I don't remember. I can't remember. Well, anyway, a lot of these books I haven't read. We've already covered the section of books within this little tiny YA section that I've read. This is the, what's it called? Historical fiction section. I don't really have a ton of historical fiction because I am not a historical fiction girly. I've not read any of these books so far, so that's really fun. Yeah, more book of the month that I haven't read. More shiny covers. This was a Christmas gift. Still haven't reached for it. This one I heard reads like YA, but it's not. And here we have some series that I haven't read. I don't show the covers to these. I've read Mark's Woman, but not Mahimata. Those books were great. I won Mahimata in a giveaway. My Twilight books I bought for 25 cents each at the library, and they're all hardcover. This is dystopian. I have not read it. I've obviously read Twilight, and I read Midnight Sun. Haven't read any of these books. This is like young adult / series of books that I have not read. The Program, I bought all of them up until book 5, I think, and wanted to wait to read them until I had all of them. And then as you can see, I have completed series that I just haven't reached for. Again, I don't know if it's because I have to be in the right mindset to read young adult, but these ones I just haven't reached for. I don't know if these are in the right order. That book is heavy for absolutely no reason. I don't know if those were in the right order. I'll get to these all eventually, okay? I hear great things about the Caraval series and Akatar. I have read the Mortal Instruments and all of the Shadowhunters books, except for one. I've read them all. My favorite, contrary to what it looks like, is actually not... This is the only one I haven't read. Because it's so big. I'm showing you. It's so big. And I haven't read this either. This is not my favorite of her series. The Mortal Instruments, not my favorite. It's because The Infernal Devices is so much better. I don't know why. I wasn't even a huge fan of the Red Scrolls of Magic, which was disappointing to me, right? Because Magnus is my favorite character in the Shadowhunter verse, but I just couldn't get into it. I love those 3 books. I probably should reread them. I only have 2 of the paperbacks of The Dark Artifices because this was the only version that was available. And now we've hit more Book of the Month books that I've read. These are the thrillers, and I've read every single book that I've showed you so far. 56 Days was great. Reckless Girl's great. Cross Her Heart was one of the first thrillers I ever read. I've read The Golden Couple recently, but Anonymous Girl was the first. The Broken Girls was my first Simone St. James. And now we've hit my Riley Sager section. I own every single one of his books. I hate this one. But otherwise, I do enjoy his writing a lot. If you watch me, you know that. The Maidens and The Silent Patient were great. I didn't like The Maidens as much as The Silent Patient. That book was fun. This book was so good. Keeping on with books that I've read. Still, I've read all of them. Mexican Gothic was so unique, a very good Gothic. You know how I feel about this, and you know how I feel about this. Ninth House was long. I read it a long time ago, but it was great. Great. That's average. This one was fun. That's why I bought the other one. And then Addie LaRue is one of my favorite books I've ever read. This one has a beautiful cover, but I can't remember anything that happens in it. And now we've hit more books that I have not read. You can see that I have a lot of Book of the Month books. I've been a subscriber since like 2017, I want to say. Yeah, I have a lot. And you can tell, truly, that thrillers are my favorite to go for with Book of the Month. I read another book by S.A. Cosby, and it was really, really sad. This book's supposed to be funny, and I don't remember what that one's about. Emma in the Night, I bought at the library. I did not purchase this or this through Book of the Month. This one I did. I cannot remember what that book is about, but I remember feeling very on edge while reading it. And then we hit more books that I've purchased through the library. Tana French was recommended to me by my children's grandma. I have a couple of her books. C.J. Tudor wrote The Chalk Man, and that's why I bought that book. More library books with the protective sleeve. The Favorite Sister, I read The Luckiest Girl Alive by that author, and I really liked it. More thrifted books. Shutter Island was one of my favorite movies in high school, and another thrifted book. Megan Miranda, I've read one of her books, and it was great from what I can remember. More 25-cent library books. Lisa Gardner, I've read one of her books and was obsessed. She's great too. And more Lisa Jewell. As you know, we love Lisa Jewell in this house, and by we, I mean me. Mindy Mejia, I've never read anything from her, so that will be fun when I get into it. And I've not read Big Little Lies. I can't believe it. Another thrifted book. Another thrifted book. A lot of the books that I have that I'm showing you are, like I said, from the library, as you can see. And then a lot of them are also from Half Price Books and Book Outlet. Back when I first started collecting all of my books, we've hit Stephen King. Back when I first started collecting all of my books, I really shopped on Book Outlet. I've read some of these books. Duma McKee is my least favorite. I've not read Lizy Stories, The Tommyknockers. I've read Pet Sematary and The Green Mile. And this was what got me to subscribe to Book of the Month. Sleeping Beauties was offered to me for free, and that's why I subscribed. I love Stephen King's short stories because they are bite-sized chunks for me to read. Otherwise, I find that his writing takes me a very, very, very long time to get through. It took me a month and a half to read 11/22/63, and it took me 3 or 4 months to read Duma McKee because I didn't like it. These are some short stories. And then we hit Dean Koontz. As you'll see, a lot of my books came from the library. And by that, I mean pretty much all of them came from the library. Shout out to everybody who recommended I don't read Intensity. It's on my shelf, and I'll get to it. More Dean Koontz. I have some hardcovers. All of these are from the library. Somebody in my town just didn't want Dean Koontz. I think I have more than one copy of Dragon Tears. Now that I'm looking at it, that's embarrassing. And then we have more library books. My Husband's Wife, which I'm very excited to finally read. This is the part of the video where I started to feel very anxious because my camera battery was flashing, so I was really hurrying through. The library books were very hard to film because that protective sheen just really got to me. I've read We Are the Brennans. I love that book. The Guest List I've read. Not a Happy Family I've read. And then Tammy Hogue, I haven't read these two books, but I have read her work before, and I know that I like her. You've made it through the stream of consciousness portion of this video, so welcome to the end where I'm going to make the TBR jar. Before we get into that, I want to unbox my book of the month books for the month of October. I have two. I selected one of the monthly selections, and then I added on a book that I have had on my TBR in book of the month for a while. So the monthly selection that I've got is When I'm Dead by Hannah Morrissey. I have not read any of Hannah's work before, so I am very excited to read this. It is a thriller, obviously. It's like one girl murdered, another one is missing. We're gonna get into it at some point, probably not within the near future, because yeah, I want to kind of try to read some of the older books that I have before I get to this, but this one's in there. And then I also have Wayward by Amelia Hart. This is a March 2023 release. It is a debut. I really like books that bounce back and forth between different timelines, and this one is supposed to cover like 5 different centuries of women, so that should be really fun. This is a debut if I didn't say that already. I searched up spooky reads and this one popped up immediately, and so I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna select that as well. Now we're gonna move on to creating the TBR jar. This is a typed list of all of the books that I have not read, except for the 2 new editions. I'll have to handwrite those in, and that's totally fine. What we're gonna do is use my paper cutter here, cut through all these, fold them up, and stick them in my TBR jar, and then that'll be the end of it. You'll see the jar in 2024. Here's the jar. Okay, let's do it. That took literally an hour to do, but I've completed it. I'm not taking the lid off because you just watched me try to cram all these little pieces of paper in here. But this is the jar. You'll see it again in the future. So that's it for today. I'll see you next week. Let me know down in the comments what books I should prioritize in January or in December. My fall is pretty fully booked out. So yeah, just let me know if you saw any books that you think I should prioritize. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.